Hepsters, what up? Hepsters, what up? Mon Caesar here, Intangible Roots, about to go live. Talk about Africanisms in American culture, addressing some comments, but hit the link below and jump in there with me. All right, hit the link. Tell your people to hit the link. Hepsters, what up? Mon Caesar here. Hepsters, Mon Caesar here, Intangible Roots. Hepsters, what up? Mon Caesar here, Intangible Roots, about to go live. It, y'all. I think I got it. 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 What y'all hear now? Bobby, I don't know. But whatsoever I hear is gonna be funky. It, y'all. I think I got it. 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 All right, can y'all? Now remember, I had the one can't be on, so you can still hear me throw a one in the chat on Zoom. If you can still hear me throw a one in the chat, and then we're gonna get this thing rolling. Here we go. Here we go. All right, cool. I think we're ready to burn. So, took a while to get started. Be better the next time. All right, so here we go. Again, here's the situation. I went to see the film Microphone Check Thursday night here, and me and my boys was talking about it, waiting for it to come out, anticipating to see where it's going. I don't necessarily agree with everything Tariq says, but I wanted to see the film, see what was going on, so spent my money, went to see it, and yeah, a couple things I didn't agree on, and so what happened was the next day he went live. Ricky Evans. The next day he went live, and I posted a comment. Now I'm gonna show y'all the comment, and we're gonna build from there. I do have some stuff. I was like, I'm not sure when I should show this. I might show this part later. Let's see what happens, how we get through there. So I'm gonna start where I just said, and I posted a comment, and he gave me a response to the comment, and I replied to that response. And so here is my response. Here's my comment. I'm trying not to look at YouTube because, as I told you, it's got a serious delay. But this is what I commented, right? And there's hella typos in this. It's crazy. Saw the film last night. Interesting. The film suggested that African diaspora has nothing to do with what has developed here in America, which is a statement that lacks any depth in research, which I believe it does. The film mentions the Charleston dance, which is a dance that developed out of Africa from a dance called the Yankee. It's in Upper Guinea. To understand the morphology of the dance, one must do real research. As a dancer, the conversations that people think they know more about dance than me is that do not dance. It's insane. So there are great points in the film. There are some great points in the film, but the research seems underdeveloped. I didn't say seem, I just said that now. As a dancer who has been a professor for the past 21 years and currently an associate professor at USC, a top one research institution in the country, with a background in I have a background in anthropology and neuropsychology and a bunch of different sciences, just so I can understand cultural dynamics. And so the editing from the film does have some divisive structures because he says the film is not divisive. It does, I think it does have some divisive structures, and I'm gonna show those. You can't acknowledge Africans for creating the cakewalk, which was based off of an Irish reel step, but abrogate Puerto Ricans building off of creating other variations to or variables to what Black breakers were doing. Also put it back in quotation. I put black in quotations because that's a whole other conversation. If we can get to it later, I'll break that down. But in here, I was just simply saying it's derogatory to call an Asian person yellow. It's derogatory to call an indigenous person red man. And we're still caught up in these terms, black and white. I do understand that black and white is a constructed idea. It doesn't define us. All human beings' skin is the same color, brown. It's just different shades from the light to the darkest. But we get caught up in these ideas. Blackness is a very real thing, which I go on to say blackness speaks to our transcendentalism of our essential self, habitual self, and social mask. This is basically essential self, habitual self, and social mask is basically understanding the received perception of what we are experiencing, how we deal with that, the habitual self, how we deal with or address the things that we are learning in these environments, right? And then the things that are practiced put on us by our immediate family are in intercultural context, if you will. So again, I enjoyed the film. I enjoyed a lot of the film, but there were clearly an agenda based in the editing, like using clips from 80 Blocks from Tiffany's. 80 Blocks from Tiffany's is this here. Hope y'all can see this. So I'm gonna be showing y'all books and everything that y'all can do your own research. This is not an attack on this brother. I think y'all should go see the film. I am just here to offer up dialogue and conversation and address something that was addressed to me based on this comment. So let's keep going. So yeah, using clips from 80 Blocks from Tiffany's, but not discussing that the gangs shown were mixed with blacks and Puerto Ricans. I've already said too much. So the brother's response was, how would FBAs from Charleston know about a tribal dance in Upper Guinea? Now, FBAs for Tariq is Foundational Black Americans. It's a concept he got from Claude Anderson, who used to say Native Black Americans, but I guess Tariq mentions that he found it controversial, so people didn't really understand, so he changed it to Foundational Black Americans. I don't necessarily subscribe to that, but I understand it. And so my response to that was, if you truly are interested, I will explain the whole thing to you. I specialize in the morphology of Afro-kinetic memory on American soil. That is looking at the migration of people from the continent of Africa, particularly dances, and how these things sort of morph over time, how collectively a dance, say in Guinea, mixes in with a dance from Ghana or mixes in a dance from Sierra Leone or wherever. And then you're still talking about mixing with the Tainos, mixing with the Spaniards and the Portuguese and the French and all that, and something sort of new kind of developing, but being deeply rooted in that African dance. And then African dances are really shown in totality. Africans don't look at dances in a compartmentalized way. We do that here in America. So when you bring up a dance on the continent to an African person, they're thinking the whole thing. I'm looking at what of the whole thing did not survive and what got mixed in with other things. So let me break this down for you, because I can break all of this down from beginning to end. Now, with this, are y'all still with me? With this, that's my offer. If you're really interested, I'll break it down, right? So, no response at all. And then I get a call and somebody's like, yo, homeboy is clearly talking about you in this live. So y'all know me. I love a good conversation. I love a good debate. So here we go. This is what came up next. And I do want to kind of go back to the gang thing. So I want to put that in there too. So I'm going to play this, and then I'm going to go back and address the gang thing, and then I'm going to keep moving it forward so we can make that connection and not have to come back to this. All right, is that good? So you see my post, and this is what the brother had to say the next day. And if you can't hear this, let me know. All right, here we go.
Don't want to miss the movie. Now there was some guy who he got in the comment section. He was a professor at some university. He was like, "Yeah, I saw the movie last night, and you guys suggested that y'all didn't get certain dances from Africa. Y'all mentioned the Charleston dance, and that comes from the Yakani dance from the Guinea tribe. And listen, let me look. We ain't doing that. That's another thing we ain't gonna do. Every time foundational Black Americans do something creative, we gotta give credit to some ancient African tribe that we haven't had a connection with in a gazillion years. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. No, 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 because the foundation of Black Americans who were on them plantations for centuries, they don't know about those tribes no more. You can tap into ancestral memory, whatever, but no, no, no. We created these things independent of those tribes. There might be some similarities, which are very minute similarities, but we created those things based on our own experiences here. We had unique experiences here, and we had unique reactions to those experiences. So yeah, we're not doing that. We're not going to give everything we do to some ancient tribe.
Okay. Now, instead of reaching out to me, you want to go live and try to step and fetch it. Well, he said it's Young Cardi, and then like you trying to clown me now, and making voices and okay, we're not doing that. Here's what we are doing: having an open mind and break this shit down. So I'll come back to the gang thing later. We're gonna stay on this. Now, this is an image of somebody doing Yankee, and this is just an audio of the song, so y'all can hear that, and then we'll keep it moving. Just wanted y'all to hear a little bit of sound. Now, again, I'm not going to show the whole dance of the Yankee. I'm going to show the step that turned into the Charleston, or most likely turned into the Charleston. I say most likely because there are some other dances on the continent that are close to this one, but there's a particular reason why it's most likely this one. And it's to a point that he actually makes. So this is a dance. And what I want you to look at is their feet and what they're doing. Because if you understand the Charleston, and if many of you know me and know I talk about the 4 bounces, dancers understand this. People that don't dance, they don't even know what they're looking at. So the boxer bounce, the 4th bounce are the bounces I talk about. That's what you see in this. Now you're going to see it flat. And there is a way to do the Charleston flat, but then the Charleston has a more bouncier feel to it. So look at the feet, and you're going to see what became the Charleston. Now, the thing about this is the Charleston doesn't necessarily go like that. It's a different tempo, but that's the foot pattern. One foot goes in front, one foot goes behind. In front and behind. Now, one of the things that, to make this connection, right? Back to Tariq's question, how are some FBAs going to see a dance then? So, and we'll let him set it up.
Because the root of hip hop comes out of the Carolinas, if we're going to be very honest. That's why many of the B-boys and the DJs in the Bronx, their roots are in the Carolinas. Even the B-boying music, James Brown is from the Carolinas. Some of the first rhymers, they got Pigmeat Markham. He made one of the first records in the 1960s that would be considered a rap record. He's rapping in 4-bar increments. He's from North Carolina. Grandmaster Caz, I think his family's from North Carolina. Melly Mel, I think his family's from North Carolina and South Carolina. One of the first female MCs.
Well, everybody black in New York City. Yeah. If you black in New York City, everybody's got family in the Carolinas.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And so up in the Bronx, the root of that's coming out of the Carolinas. We got to give them credit. It didn't come out of Jamaica. There's absolutely nothing from Jamaica that influenced hip hop. Even Kool Herc, when he came over, he had to get rid of all of his Jamaican culture and really get more Americanized. According to him, he was doing what he saw the people in the Bronx doing. So we got to pay homage where homage is due.
I agree with that. We got to pay homage where homage is due. So let's unpack that. Now, let me check in with y'all. Can y'all still hear me on YouTube? I want to make sure we're good because that delay is something crazy. So if you can still hear me on YouTube, throw a 3 in the chat. Now, it's interesting to bring this point up, right? So to say, just to play devil's advocate, we're not going to say that hip hop came from Jamaica. And I'm not saying it did, but we're not going to say hip hop came from Jamaica, but you're going to say it really came from the Carolinas because that's where the people are from. They're from Carolina. So are you saying not the Bronx and the Carolinas? But then it begs the question, where are the people in the Carolinas from? Let's look at that. Now, for you all, I want you to understand this book right here. It's the Atlas of the Transatlantic Slave Trade. And in this atlas, the research has been done. And I don't know if I can do it now because it's just me. I know no team is here. I'm just kind of working by myself. Some of the team is in here, but I don't know how to get the stuff to them. I'm gonna try to get the link to you all. Give me a second, see if I can throw it in the chat myself. Bear with me while we do things like this and try to make stuff happen for y'all. So here we go. This, that I'm putting in the chat now, that is the link to get information about how this was compiled, right? So here, this clip here. This clip is showing you where people were taken from and where they were dropped off. And you see Carolinas, Georgia, 211,000. Now, mind you, people have been on the narrative of like 12.7 million Africans were enslaved and about 10,500,000 made it on the Gorée Islands off the coast of Senegal by the door of no return. I don't know if it's actually by the door, but there's a plaque that says some 20 million Africans went through there. Now, most of them went to South America and throughout the Caribbean islands. And even though that looks like a lot, it's actually a small percentage that actually came compared to the people that were taken to Brazil. But this gives you a look of how a dance in Guinea gets to the Carolinas. Now, most of the people here, and let's keep going. Here's another look, right? South Carolina. And here's another look. And y'all can get this book. I want y'all to get this book. Now, the thing about it is this. Some people think that, and this is not geared towards Tariq or anybody, I'm just talking about people. I was brought up in the school thinking that African culture was destroyed during the transatlantic slave trade. You can't stop culture. Culture's in the mind, it's in the body, right? I may use different tools once I get to a new land because I'm gonna have a new environment and figure something out, but I already know what to do. I don't lose my ability to build a drum just because I was taken off land. I still know how to build a drum. I just might not have the same tools that I would always use. So people in Guinea were could cultivate rice. So in the Gullah Islands, it's very marshlands, and people cultivated rice there. Now, this is not just people from Guinea. As you can see, it's people from Sierra Leone and other parts, even Ghana, there's other parts there, right? But we know a lot of people from Guinea were taken to the Gullah Islands. And because it was marshland, you had high issues of malaria. And they knew how to combat that because you get the sap from a gum tree and you make a serum that can deal with malaria. But the enslavers didn't go down there too much. They pretty much left them be. So a lot of their traditional ways stayed intact. Even if you go to the Gullah Islands now, it's like stepping back in time because you'll hear the same cadences in terms of their speech, the dialects, the traditions are upheld. Every year they do this big festival. It's still there. The Gullah Islands in New Orleans is where we really get a sense of the cultural history of Africans in America and what they brought. And so this is where this dance is, right? That part survived. I can't tell you exactly how the part survived, but that part survived. We know people brought that dance with them because wherever you go, you take your culture with you. So if you're enslaved and you're in moments of dancing, what are you doing? You doing a new dance? No, you're doing the dances that are already in your body. You're playing the rhythms that are already in your body. And I'm gonna get to the myth about, it's not really a myth, but I'm gonna break down the drum, the Negro Act of 1740. We're about to come up on that. So when we look at this, we get a bunch of different languages. We get Wolof, we get Mandinka, we get Bambara, we got Susu, right? It's a lot going on. So you're pulling from all of these people are coming together. A lot of the dances are mixing with each other. There are some places in Africa where this tribe was mixing in dances, but a lot of them were separate. But because of the slave trade, they're mixing for sure in here. And as I said earlier, they're also mixing with the Tainos. They're also mixing with the Portuguese people. They're mixing with French people. They're mixing with English. They're mixing with Irish. So that everything is kind of creating itself in a new way. But that doesn't mean the deep-rooted structure doesn't survive, right? One of my favorite quotes is by Cheryl Willis, who's an author, speaking at a conference in 1990. And she said that the deep-rooted structure of a culture is found in the retentions of characteristics of behavior that are not bound by time and geography. So we see this stuff. If you know what you're looking for and how to look, we understand it. In the Africanist aesthetics, those things still survive. So how does it get there? So we're here. Well, we're going to take a little digression for a hot second because we're talking about the Carolinas, and we know the people are there. We know that they're in Gullah Islands. What is that, 90 miles from Charleston or something to that effect? So you do have, and this is kind of we're going to take a little digression into the drum. So this is a sign talking about the Stono Rebellion, 1739. They believe that this rebellion was started by a gentleman named Angolan Jimmy. Obviously, the name Jimmy was given to him, but he was from Angola. There was a time where they were bringing Angolans, but Angolans fought back. And then there became a time where they stopped bringing Angolans because they fought back. And so you see here, if you don't know anything about the Stono Rebellion, it was about 20 Africans, and they rallied and they went to, this is near Wallace Creek, and in the Stono River, where they ended up killing 2 shopkeepers. They chopped their heads off. They left them on the steps. They got ammunition and they kept it moving and amassed to almost 90, almost 100 Africans. And the way that they did that was through the drum, because the drums talk. One of the biggest things of hip hop is what? The drum. So the drums talk, and the drum is very significant because the drum actually represents the birth canal, right? If you look at like a djembe, the top half of a djembe is like this, which gives you the phallic symbol for a woman. The bottom half of the djembe gives you the symbol for man. That stretch of the drum, you can't see my conga drums over there, but that stretch of the drum represents the birth canal. Tapping on the skin of the drum represents the heartbeat, and the sound coming through is being born through the birth canal. So drums are a tradition, there's a ritual, they're almost sacred in a sense. So this Stoner Rebellion happened. So in 1739, when this happened, in 1740, they created the Negro Act, which forbid Africans from gathering in large groups, from selling goods, from drumming, because they realized the drums talk, which is kind of weird because people knew the drums talked already. But the thing is, this happened in South Carolina and North Carolina and a few other places in the South. This didn't happen in New Orleans. So people hear, well, they stopped the drums. They didn't stop the drums everywhere. New Orleans, you still played drums, right? So the drums happened, and you didn't have access in the Carolinas. You didn't have access to the drums until around 1862, right? Talking about the Civil War, and the drums come back. So that's like 121 years or whatever it is, something like that. But those rhythms stayed in the people, but they also changed and became other things, which I'm going to break down. But this is an image that somebody drew. It's supposed to be, well, I can't say it's supposed to be Angle and Jimmy, but it's directed to the Stoner Rebellion. So this idea of Angle and Jimmy. Now, the drums talking. I ain't done with Charleston. Coming back. The drums talking. Here's some clips of the drums talking. So here we go.
Drums are not only musical instruments. They are also a means of communication. People talk to each other by using drums. Many African languages are based on high and low sounds. For example, when the Ashantis say good morning, it sounds like this. Machi, machi. The word has a low sound and a high sound. Machi. It can also be said by a drum that can beat both high and low sounds. Thank you, Mr. Ite. Mr. Ite has just told me you are welcome. This small drum is used for sending messages short distances. The pitch of the drum is changed by pressing on it. Mr. Ite is signaling a lion is near the village. It's now saying, run, run. In former times, when lions...
So the drums talk. If you understand it, you know what words are being used, you know what's being said, but you have to have an understanding of that. And that's no different than if you don't speak Spanish and people are speaking Spanish around you, you don't know what they're saying, but they do. You have to lock into the thought process of what that is. So for them, this thought process, they understand that in its instrumental, grammatical structure, if you will. So here's another clip, and this is from the video Foley, where you're going to see Africans using language and drums that marry the phrasing of that, just to give you a different example.
Parole, c'est des rythmes.
Kini masenekele ipo seneti. Eke. Kini masenekele ipo seneti. Eke. Eke. Kana kuduba. Kana eke. Kana kuduba. Kana eke. Kana kuduba. Kana eke. Kini masenekele ipo seneti. Kana kuduba. Eke. Kana kuduba. Eke. Kana kuduba. Eke. Eke. Seneti gomma. Eke. Seneti gomma. Eke. Seneti gomma. Kana. Eke. Seneti gomma. Kana. Eke. Seneti gomma. Eke. Kana kuduba. Kana kuduba. Kana kuduba. Ibidi. Eke. Na ibidi. Na ibidi. Na ibidi. Na ibidi. Na ibidi. Kana. Eke. Kana. Na ibidi. Kana. Na ibidi. Seneti gomma.
Now, some of y'all who have been on some of my other lives, y'all may have seen me play that before. And for those who didn't, there you go. But you see the drummers each having a different rhythm. This is where we talk about polyrhythms. And for Europeans, they thought that drums coming together and everybody having a different thing to play was a bunch of noise. But it all goes together and becomes one thing once it gets rolling. But this is that the drums have the ability to talk. The smaller drums are talking within the community. The bigger drums can reach out to further people. As a matter of fact, if you think about how they did it in, forget the name of that movie where they like lit a fire here and they're trying to warn people over there, and These people see the fire, so they light a fire, and then they would do the drums like that in the continent. They would play that reach so far, and they would play to keep it going. But they're talking in communication with each other. That rhythm never stops. And one of the things that I'll get to that in a second. I'm going to talk about some of the things that popped up in America that take the drum and take it into another context. So when you have the drum and you have the different rhythms of the drum, that doesn't disappear when you lose the drum. Then you start clapping, right? You start clapping, or you could be like, those would be claps, right? These are claves. But let's say that's a rhythm to what you're playing on the drums. Then those things become claps. We see this in church, right? We get to things like the bones. And some of y'all have seen me play my bones before. These are actual bones. I don't know if y'all can see that. I'll bring it back up because I got the PowerPoint up. But there's bones, there's wooden bones, there's actually ivory bones. And so the rhythms of the drum became what you would play on the bones as well. Right, so you have all these different things that turn to spoons, all this different stuff would happen. And, you know, that's just a transfer from it. So it doesn't stop. It changes into something else, but it's based in what it came from before. As I said, you don't lose culture. Culture's within you. So if you're taking this somewhere else and you don't have drum, you still going to drum, but now it's going to be on your body. What became known as patting juba here in Senegambia was called pat pat from the Jolo people. And I'm going to show you a little bit of that. Kind of bouncing around, so much stuff to look at. You see how she's going from her upper body down to her legs. That is a traditional dance done in Senegambia. That is no different than us playing hambone, or what some people call patting juba, which is not a dance. It's a way to keep the drum rhythm. So there's a person that's playing patting juba, and y'all not gonna really be able to see me, but there's a person playing patting juba, if you can see me in the little window, and you see how she's here and going down to her legs, but y'all know patting juba, right? That's the same concept. So that's coming from there, and when the drums are taken away, that's what you go to. You go to patting juba, you go to playing the bones, you go to playing the spoons. These things happen because those rhythms are in you, and you keep that going. It doesn't die. Are we good? Just doing a little check-in. Y'all know how I do. I like to check in. So, just to understand how those rhythm changes, and to even take it back a step further, you all have heard me discuss about mitochondrial DNA, elements of mitochondrial DNA. So all the eggs that a woman would carry, and I'll say it again for those that have heard me say it before, but all the eggs that a woman would carry in her ovaries develop when she is only 4 months old in utero in her mother, right? This means that our cellular life begins as an egg at that time. I didn't want that to change. Look at this thing, it's just doing its own kind of thing. It must be on that timer, and I didn't know it. That's all right, I'll keep going back. So this happens. Now, when you talk about the development, there have been studies done. You have Robert Fance, who did the visual procedure, looking at the visual stimulation of babies. You had neuropsychologists like Alexandra Lamont, and I can't think of the other woman's name, from South America, or from South Africa, who did the studies on auditory stimulation, because the auditory system of the ear, it starts to develop at 4 weeks. It is fully functional. What is my phone doing? Phone is tripping. The auditory system is fully functional around 24 weeks, and the studies that have been done says that not only do babies hear in the womb, but they remember what they heard in the womb. The study that was done gave pregnant women a piece of music to play over and over for while they were the last 3 months of gestation. Gave a single piece of music to play. After the baby was born, they said, don't play that music again. They waited a year, they bring the mother and the child back, they play music, and the child notices or looks at the speaker every time they hear that song. So for them, they were like, not only do they hear we're in the womb, they remember. So y'all know my analogy of it is like, if you can hear somebody's stomach growling, if you can hear what's going on the inside, what's on the inside can hear what's going on the outside. Even through the amniotic fluid, it's just like listening to somebody speak with their head underwater. But this information is in the cellular memory. And it is why at age 2, babies start to show a certain proclivity to this movement. So they've been hearing it in the womb, and then once born, they're seeing it.
Vou bater de novo.
Right. The cultural significance of what they're hearing is there, which is why babies are picking up on it. Now that's in Brazil. Here is a 2-year-old baby. Some of y'all have seen me show these, and then I'm gonna get back to breaking down to Charleston. But just a little digression so we understand some of the deep rootedness of this. So here is little baby Khalil at 2 years old in London rapping.
Yeah. Come on.
Ale, hit it.
When it gives you space.
Cut it.
Yo, we got the skill, so therefore we build. We're coming through right now, me and Khalil. Yeah, just dropping that freestyle. This is what we do all day long. Yeah, so here we come again. Bring it back up. We're standing here, brothers and friends. Right now, these
Go.
Going, go.
Just like you, kid.
So when we talking about the African diaspora, when we're talking about Africanist aesthetics, they are demonstrated in these things. Just how it survives, that the child is picking up what they see the older people do, and they're passing that down. And just because you're in a new land, you're going to have a new environment, so you're going to have some new things to navigate, but you don't lose what has already been retained in the body. You take it with you. Culture is in the mind, in the body, and you take it with you. Now, we're going to make our way back to Charleston. But the idea of, to make one more connection, the idea of how the drumming cadences went into the clapping, and then we see this heavily because of the slave trade, we see this heavily here when it came to the church. Here are the staple singers. They are singing Can't Sit Down. Again, we know the significance of the drum. But what happens when you take the drum away? We focus on different things. So where's the beat in this?
Yonder come a
I'm gonna speed up through it, so I won't keep y'all here all day.
the head turkey.
Well, we got Pops on the guitar.
He's a mighty man. Well, he killed Goliath. To kill the head turkey. Sit down, servant, and rest a while. Sit down, servant. I can't sit down.
Get a hand clapping and shoot here. We went to a black church.
I can't sit down.
Polyrhythm.
Just got to heaven and I can't sit down. I can't sit down. Oh, I can't sit down. I can't sit down. I just got to heaven and I can't sit down. Since you can watch the sun, see how steady.
Right, we hear it in the clapping in the way we clapped in the church because of the drum was missing, and that just picked up. Again, if y'all are joining us on Instagram, we are on YouTube. This is where the videos are being seen. This is where the other parts of the PowerPoint are being seen. So coming into the YouTube channel, the link is somewhere on the Instagram page. Now, we took a little digression. We're going to bring it back to the Charleston. So what were we last talking about? We were talking about how this movement traveled from Guinea, forced migration, people taking their culture with them. You do not leave it behind. Where they are taken to, the Carolinas. Where did Tariq say you should give credit to hip hop to? That I'm not totally agreeing with that, but where you should give the credit to, the Carolinas, because he's saying a lot of the pioneers come from Carolinas. Well, where do those people, because trust me, they wasn't just springing up out of the ground here, they were brought here. And their traditions and ways stayed with them. So we're in the Gullah Islands, marshland, just to recap, marshland, high malaria, which is why the enslavers stay away, which means the Africans stay true to their rituals and customs. They start to migrate towards Charleston, which is some 90 miles or whatever it is away. And this brings us to this story here. Reverend Daniel Jenkins. Reverend Daniel Jenkins was orphaned around the age of 8, I believe. His parents were enslaved. And when he grew up, he was working in a shipyard and he stumbled across 4 young boys. I'm not sure how old, but 4 young boys huddled up in a boxcar, in a train car. And he asked them what were they doing out there so late? And, you know, why did their parents let them out so late? And they let them know that they didn't have anybody. So he took them home to his home, his wife, and they raised those boys. Him being orphaned himself, this led him to create the first orphanage in South Carolina, which is still there. And he created this band. So I'm gonna read some stuff and show y'all some documents. So he created this band called the Reverend Jenkins Orphanage Band, and he taught them different things, and they would play music to raise money. So you want to hopefully y'all can see this. In fact, drop in the chat, can you see the book I am holding up? This book is The Gullah Guide to Charleston. The Gullah Guide to Charleston. It's by Alfonso Brown. Get this book. I don't just want y'all, and y'all know me, I don't just want you to listen to me. I don't come on these platforms and tell you stuff with no evidence, with no proof. I guide you to material so that you can do your own research. So if you can see this book, put in the chat Gullah, Gullah, so I know y'all can see this. But let me read something from here. All right, so we can break some of this stuff down so y'all can have some other information. Keep y'all on point, you know. People don't always give up the roots and things. All right, so where we at? All right, here we go. We're gonna go. I'm still waiting for somebody to throw something in the chat. I hope y'all still with me. So drop something in the chat to let me know y'all are there. And y'all can see the book. All right, so Reverend Jenkins taught the children many different occupations. Some of the skills taught were baking, farming, butchering, printing, housekeeping, academics, and music. Many of the former residents became printers, teachers, ministers, musicians. But the orphanage became famous for its band. The famous Jenkins Orphanage Band toured Europe, was invited by the Queen, as a matter of fact, and the United States to raise funds for the orphanage. It gained national and international recognition. Once, while in New York City, the band members met the ragtime composer James P. Johnson, and he taught them some selections from his musical Running Wild. Running Wild was a famous musical that came out in 1924 that had Charleston in it. But the Charleston Step had already been in New York for a minute. Now, in addition, he taught them a dance. This is James P. Johnson, who created the song, The Charleston. In addition to teaching them some stuff from Running Wild, he taught them a dance movement that went along with the music. They were probably very familiar with the dance steps since they were believed to have originated in Charleston and were made popular by Herman Brown. Herman Brown was associated with Reverend Jenkins' orphanage band, but he had left as a teenager to go live in New York. So he had already had to dance there. People started seeing the Charleston in New York City around 1905. So, by Herman Brown. When he was a teenager, Herman Brown hopped on the freight train and went to New York City. Herman was often called upon to come up and do that crazy dance. See, it didn't have a name. People think, oh, it's named after Charleston, but they didn't call it that because the dance actually came from Guinea, and they were remembering the steps in their body and doing it, but they didn't have a name because over time, this is where I agree with people, over time you will forget stuff because especially during enslavement eras, the longer you were here, the more they're trying to acculturate you out of your thing and into a new thing. But as you keep bringing Africans, you are reminded. But now the dances are blending with so much stuff. You're not doing African dances in totality. You're doing bits and pieces of them. And so an African wouldn't recognize that step, Charleston, as a part of the Yankee, but that's where the step originated out of as it morphed into something else. So again, Herman was often called upon to come up and do that crazy dance he did down in Charleston. Upon returning home, the Jenkins Band played Johnson's music on the streets of Charleston and also performed the dance steps he had taught them. White ladies would often do and imitate the boys doing it. And so there's just some information about that, but this is give you a guide to the Gullah Islands on what's going on in Charleston. A lot of important information in here. I suggest you pick it up if you're interested. If you find yourself going to South Carolina and going to the Gullah Islands, you don't want this. But let's keep going. Let's keep going and talk about a little bit more. Now, this is the band. I'm going to show you the clip of the band doing their thing. This is in front of the orphanage. So you can see this dance is being done. That's the band. Now, Irvin Jenkins started this orphanage in 1891. And the band came together and going to travel. And he had up to 300 from ages 5 all the way up to 21 people who were orphaned, almost 300 people, 300 kids, young adults. And they traveled and they made money for the thing. Now, this book here, this is called Music on My Mind. This is by the famous jazz pianist Willie the Lion Smith. And this is his memoir. And so this is part of what he had to say. Another character we saw a lot at Leroy's, this was a tavern to go to and kind of enjoy yourself. Another character we saw a lot at Leroy's was a dancer whose real name was Russell Brown. Now, I told you this dancer here is Herman Brown. Now, maybe it's Herman Leroy Brown or Leroy Herman Brown, or maybe they just got the first name wrong. But I'm going to read it again. Another character we saw a lot at Leroy's was a dancer whose real name was Russell Brown. He hailed from Charleston, South Carolina, and he was always dancing somewhere for tips, either in the saloons, the cabarets, or on the street corners. His dance was a Geechee dance, and this is referring to the Ogeechee River. So his dance was a Geechee step, like those I had seen in the jungles. This is another venue you can go to. And I'm gonna just drop down here a little bit. And when they met him on the street, they would holler at him, "Hey, Charleston, do your Geechee dance." This led to the dance becoming known as the Charleston, right? So folks say that this is how the dance known as the Charleston got its name, because people would say, "Hey, Charleston, do that Geechee dance." And then the dance became known as the Charleston. And it's said to have happened in New York. And then it, like I said, James P. Johnson did it, but the dance was already there. He created the music to go with the dance and then taught these other people from the Jenkins band, but he figured they already knew it because it was coming from them anyway. So again, this is another account of people seeing that dance and moving forward. There is another book where this is brought up as well. This is by Mark Knowles. I'm not going to read from this one. This is Mark Knowles' book. This is The Wicked Waltz and Other Scandalous Dances, where there's a section in here where he talks about the Charleston as well. And he talks about, and he names him Russell Brown as well. As a matter of fact, why not? I'll just go to that. I'll go to that section. And he's actually referring to Willie the Lion Smith. So in his biography, Music on My Mind, James piano great Willie the Lion Smith recalled one musician from the Jenkins Orphanage Band, Russell Brown, used to do a strange little dance step, and the people of Harlem used to shout out to him as he passed by, "Hey, Charleston, do that Geechee dance." So Mark Knowles is referencing Willie the Lion Smith. Willie Lion Smith's book came out in 1978. You should check it out. Now, we still talking about Carolinas. Now look, here is a photo of Herman Brown. The first young man that you saw in the video with Jenkins Orphanage Band may or may not have been Herman Brown. Nobody has yet confirmed that. They might not have been asked that question, but I will be in Charleston and at the end of June. And I'm already in conversations with the people at the Historical Society there. See, one of the things I've done, as I mentioned on my other live, I've been to the Library of Congress another time. I do the research. I really get into it. I take my ego out of it. I get to the information. And that's all this is about. It's about the information that's out there. Now, whether or not people choose to believe it, that's on them. I'm going to just share with y'all the information. So I'm trying if I can find out if this Herman Brown is the same little boy that's in there doing the Charleston. And you're going to see that evolve. So to show you some other stuff. Now, in the first book, in this book here, they mention like the white women in Charleston seeing these little boys doing it and coming up and doing the dance, right? So as people get something, the migrating is happening, right? The way dances migrate is because people leave an area and go somewhere else, or people come onto something, whether or not they have the skill set to do it at a proficient level as those who invented it or created or innovated it or continued it. That's for discussion. But here's a clip showing of what this book is talking about, of the white women coming to do the dance. Again, Jenkins Orphanage Band standing in front of the orphanage itself playing. There's no sound in this clip, and you can see this white lady doing the dance. Variations of the Charleston. Now, these dances will travel in this way many times. So even when you think about the Big Apple dance, which is not named after New York City, it's actually named after a synagogue church in South Carolina, where black kids could dance on the bottom and the white kids had to dance in the balconies because of segregation. And the steps that came together created this dance called the Big Apple. The dance traveled up the coast, going all the way up to Myrtle Beach, where young people did it, people in college and whatnot, and this created things. So dances migrate, and it doesn't have to be from the person that originated it. It can migrate through someone else. You know, even when you think about hip hop and people are like, well, how did such and such see breaking at such a time? We were just doing it because people moved it. People went into the army that were dancers, and they didn't have to be the best dancer in the block. They didn't have to be the best dancer in the neighborhood or in the city, but they could probably do a little something. And I know, talking to B-Boy Storm in Germany, he was like, no, the officers, he saw breaking with the officers at the clubs they would go to there. So they're bringing it with you. Again, what is part of your lived experience stays with you. It develops, and you take it with you, especially if you're really into the thing. So nothing is just left because you left an area. You take that and drop that in different soil. And so, like, to the significance of Herc being in the Bronx, okay, but what if his family wouldn't have moved to the Bronx? His sister Cindy probably still would have threw a party, a back to school party, to earn extra money for school clothes. She probably still did that. Because wherever you go, you do what you do. It just so happened that they were in the Bronx, and they lived in a building that there were no gangs around that building. That was a upper middle class family structure. It was like 4 buildings. It was different. Everything was burning on the opposite side. Everything was really going crazy on the opposite side. So that's even a conversation. But staying with Charleston, because I know I can digress, I'm going to show you now a clip of Shorty George Snowden and his dance partner, Maddie Purnell, and they're doing the beginning stages of the Lindy Hop. And understand the Lindy Hop has influence from European structured dances as well. It is not a pure thing. It is being innovated on something else. So I've heard Tariq, when he was talking about the Puerto Ricans, he was like, yeah, the Puerto Ricans came later and they were the first students. I don't necessarily subscribe to that, but that's his take on it, that they didn't create anything. They were there, but they didn't create anything. But I'm like, their creation is an interesting thing, because if you're saying you have to do something that's never been done, air flares hadn't been done. So do we not give them credit? Though and for people who look at the jazz stuff, it's called eccentric dancing. Anything that you see in the jazz era, the 20s, 30s, and 40s, that looks similar to breaking, it's part of the eccentric dancing. Rubber legs was part of eccentric dancing. Rubber necking was part of eccentric dancing. Rubber necking is, you could look at Rubberneck Holmes. We would do all this crazy stuff with his necks. Lego Mania was part of eccentric dancing. We do all these crazy things with your legs. And we're gonna talk about that too. I'm gonna give y'all some tea on that as well. Let me see, did I put that one clip in here? I probably didn't, but sorry, I'll show you. I'm sure some of you have seen me use that before anyway. All right, so anyways, getting back. When you're looking at that stuff, it's not the early hip hop. It's jazz, but it's part of eccentric jazz dancing. And so we need to do that. If we're talking about giving credit where credit is, you can't say one thing. You know, James Brown is not hip hop music, even though Grandmaster Caz was like, I DJ blend hip hop. No, you DJ using funk. The funk is funk. James Brown did not call his music hip hop. You don't get to rename what James Brown said it was. But I understand. So we're seeing these things change. And when you see this dance here, this isn't from a movie. And so it's not his real name in it, but what you're looking for is the similarity between how he's doing the Charleston and what you just saw those two little girls and Herman Brown do with the Charleston. There are different variations of the Charleston. They leave with the cakewalk. Now I'm gonna talk a little bit about the cakewalk too, because Tariq had something, as far as I'm concerned, trying to clown me about the cakewalk, which you don't dance, so you can't clown me at all. I dance. Now, the Charleston, you have so many different variations of the Charleston, right? You have a basic Charleston, you have flappers Charleston, you had a collegiate Charleston, you had a jump Charleston, you had a scarecrow Charleston, you had a flying Charleston, you had a round the world Charleston. There's many different Charlestons, but if you don't dance, you just think it's one. If you don't dance, you don't know how to look at the deep-rooted structure of the movement and make the connections to what came before it. Now, the Charleston turned into the mashed potato. Here's your Charleston. As a matter of fact, that's the drop Charleston, but he's not going all the way down. Right? That turned into the mashed potato. Here is a clip of a combination of Charleston turning into the mashed potato. Mashed potato went side to side, laterally. So how do these dancers survive? They're part of the conversation in what we do as dancers, right? So when you understand that, Charlie Atkins, who was born in 1913, tap dancer, and Charlie Atkins becomes the choreographer for Motown. And Charlie Atkins is teaching the dancers on Motown how to enter the stage, how to exit the stage, how to be able to dance and at the microphone and do little steps. But he is teaching them dances from the 20s, 30s, and 40s, right? They start doing them. Young teenagers of that generation start looking up at their peers and start imitating the Temptations and start imitating the Pips from Gladys Knight and Pips, start imitating all these. And Charlie also worked with a lot of doo-wop groups who were not with Motown before he got with Motown. So the young people, like they look at young people today, they look at a Usher or whomever and copy what they do. Like my generation would copy Michael Jackson and so on. Like the hip hop generation influenced by James Brown. Like James Brown was influenced by Little Buck, musically influenced by Roy Brown. That's how these things get passed down. The movement that Black people do is part of our corporeal conversation. It gets passed down. This is how it survived. It comes from Guinea. It is brought because it is in the body. It is morphed a bit because it's now not the true way it was done, but sections and are mixed with other things. And it travels from the Gullah Islands to Charleston. Reverend Daniel Jenkins, it travels from there to England, to New York. It becomes a whole other thing. James P. Johnson writes a song called The Charleston. He puts it in Running Wild. You also see it in Shuffle Along, where Florence Mills, who was one of the baddest dancers ever in the jazz era, did it. Florence Mills, I believe, was 21, 23. Josephine Baker was in Shuffle Along, but she was like 15 at the time. Florence Mills left and did Popeye Blackbird in England. The dances travel with people, right? In the hip hop era, when people go on tour, and if you only saw a dance in a video, you would see it then live because you saw the show. And if you're a young person, you were inspired by what you just saw on the show or in the performance you went to. You might not know the name of the step, but you might see variations, and now you're doing that. So the dances migrate and they travel and they change, but it's still part of the same continuum. To say that what Black folks do in this country is not part of the African diaspora is the most ridiculous thing I will ever hear anybody say. So let's keep going. How do we get from that? Now, y'all know the Kid and Play kick step. Originally called the Funky Charleston. Supposedly their dancer, Nadine Ruffin, who is also known as Hi Hat, who is the choreographer on The Voice. It has been said that she came up with the idea of them doing this Charleston as a collective and kicking each other's foot. How true it is, I asked her, but I didn't hear back from her. But y'all know what that is, but we'll still look at it. We'll still look at it. All right. So even that clip I showed you, the two little girls in Charleston, they were doing that same thing. They were kicking at each other, not necessarily clicking heels and feet the way that Kid and Play was doing it. But then we still go further and we look, this is in the 80s. Now we look at the Light Feet era, where the young people in Light Feet era are still liking it and connecting it to the Charleston.
It's kind of like the Charleston, you know, the Lindy Hop. It's just it's a little tricked out. 3 and 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4.
Right, so you see a stylized version of the Charleston. The things morph, but that doesn't mean that they're disconnected from what came before it. They are still connected to what came before it. Are y'all with me? Are you understanding me? Now, this next part I'm gonna go into is the Senegambians in Congo Square. There's some other things I still didn't show y'all that I could go back to, but I didn't forget about the gang thing. We're gonna get to the gang thing because Tariq said some stuff about the gangs that I was like, that ain't actually accurate. But I understand what you're saying, it just ain't accurate. And I talked to the Black Spades the other day and they confirmed it, not accurate. So we're gonna look at that. Again, we human, we make mistakes, it's okay. People write books, and just because they write something in a book doesn't mean that they're being divisive. They might have just got it wrong. Which is why in a book, we get to write another one so we can have a second edition and clear up whatever we might have gotten wrong. All right. Let me add one more thing to the mix before we completely leave South Carolina. Another book, Africanisms in American Culture. This is by Joseph Holloway. Amazing. You want to talk about the food that was brought from Africa here, like okra. You want to talk about understanding Southern cuisine. You want to talk about words like okay and funky and jazz that came from the continent that came here. There's plenty. The word dig, jam. This breaks it down. Beautiful research. Now, in a section in here, talking about the Carolinas, let's add this to the mix, right? We want to do research. We want to read. Now, mind you, reading a book is hope, and most books, especially books like this, academic books, are very well researched. It doesn't mean that they don't make mistakes, right? We're still human. But we want some information and we want to find out other sources. You go to the bibliographies and you find out where they cited their material from. You don't jump on social media and just start spitting a bunch of stuff. Let me know where you got it from. Let me see the clip. Who did you cite? How did you find this? I can give you all that. I'll break it all down. That's what we do when we teach in universities. Everybody else don't necessarily have to do that. But, all right, so West Africans, right? Again, Africanisms in American culture. West Africans, between 1670 and 1700, Africans were imported to South Carolina, predominantly from Guinea. The majority of these Guinea Africans were Wolofs. You remember the photo? Here, I'll go back. The photo I showed, right? And you see on here where it says Wolof up the top, where it says Goree, that's where the Goree Islands are, which shows the port of the door of no return, where it says about 20 million Africans went through that port alone. It wasn't the only port. And remember, one of the largest ports in America was in South Carolinas. So The majority of these Guinea Africans were Wolofs, and of Mande, such as Barbarous, Fulani. Fulani is where a lot of the style of braids that we do here in America come from Fulani people. The Susis, the Wolofs, the most numerous of the African groups to arrive in the United States in the 17th century, were mostly house servants who had extensive and close contact with European Americans. They were perhaps the first Africans whose cultural elements and language were assimilated by and retained within the developing culture of America. You have to understand these things, how this stuff gets here and how it changes and shifts. You don't dismiss what came before you, you make the connections. I'm just going to read that part. Yeah, I'm just going to read that part. There's a lot of percentages of like how many Africans were brought. You'll get all those once you get this book. I don't know if you can really see that, but you'll get all those percentages and the breakdowns because they kept meticulous records of the slave ships, not calling African slaves because again, Africans were not slaves. They were enslaved. There's a very big difference. You're not descendants of slaves. You're descendants of African people from wherever part they were from, but they were enslaved. People that go to jail are not jailbirds. That's John or Jim or Freddie that is in jail. I gotta watch what y'all be saying. It makes sense. Be respectful, right? Again, we want to tell the truth, right? We want to tell the truth. We want to give credit where credit is due, right? We want to make the connections. We want to be tethered that our culture didn't just pop up, that this culture is retained in the body and is centuries old. How did they see something a long time ago? Are you kidding me? That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard anybody say. How? But I understand when you don't do that kind of research, you don't make the connections, so it's okay. Anyway, let's jump to the Congo. I got some more stuff you gotta read. As a matter of fact, let me see. Here you go. This book here, this is the chronicle of the discovery of, the discovery and conquest of Guinea. This is volume 2. I have a 3-set volume that was written by John Barbeau. But this is a hard read. The print, you'll go blind trying to read this mess. But it's, again, you're talking about, for these people, these Europeans who did not like us, for these Europeans who had beliefs that we were less than human, and some of y'all have heard me talk about Herodotus, who said that, you know, the language of we eat snakes and share wives, do all this other crazy stuff, and even John Barbeau, the stuff that Jean Barbeau said, and a lot of these people who would journey to Africa and had things and write about us. It's still interesting that if you don't care about something, right, you just dismiss it. They didn't care about us, but still wrote what they saw on these journeys. They still documented this stuff. And they probably didn't think it would last past their lifetime, but they documented it, and now we have it, so we got that account as well. You can go to the Library of Congress and hear in the later years, in the 1800s, and hear the audio tapes of the people that were enslaved, the Africans that were enslaved, and you can juxtapose that against the other research you can do at Library of Congress, at other historical societies, at the stuff that is written, but even the stuff that Europeans wrote on their journey. So they kept meticulous records, and you can get the information of how many Africans were actually in these certain cities. So let's keep this going, because I got some other stuff to give y'all too. All right, so the Congo period. All right, this is shortly after the Spanish people took over. New Orleans became heavily Congo. And I got a couple of things I'm going to read y'all from this joint. But before we do that, let's move through some of this. So here is a plaque, and you'll see these plaques all over. You go to different cities and states and stuff, and you will find these plaques. So in this plaque, we're talking about Congo Square in the vicinity. was a spot which the Homos Indians, the indigenous people in that area, the Homos Indians, used before the arrival of the French for celebrating their annual corn harvest. Now, also in the corn harvest, this is where the word breakdown becomes popular, right? And the dance breakdown. I'm gonna show a clip. Tariq showed the clip in his film. He didn't name the people in the clip. I'm gonna name them, and y'all probably heard me name them before, and I'll tell you what they're doing and the steps that they're actually doing. And so during the corn harvest, during a festival, when you're breaking down the corn, that's where it comes from. When you're popping the part of the corn off, that's called a breakdown. And you had a game to see who could break down the most corn and have piles. You also had people playing banjos and fiddles at the time, and we're dancing to that. A banjo is an African instrument, originally made out of a gourd with the skin like a drum, but with the strings, because Africa did have string instruments. So even that comes from there, even though, you know, people associate it with country and white. Country music came from black folk. That instrument came from Africa. So that's where the breakdown comes from. And the step that is in the clip from 1894 that was shot by Thomas Edison in Orange, New Jersey at the new studio that he had is of the first three African Americans, to use that term, first three African Americans to be caught on video. They were in a show called The Passing Show. And it was Joe Rostas dancing first, Denny Televere dancing second, and Walter Wilkins dancing third. And we'll get to that in a second. But this just talked about that corn harvest and was considered sacred ground, talking about Congo Square, considered sacred ground. The gathering of the enslaved Africans, the vendors of Congo Square, originated as early as the 1740s. During 1740 in South Carolina, you had the Negro Act, so you couldn't gather. Right? What happened in South Carolina didn't happen throughout the South. During Louisiana French colonial period and continued during the Spanish colonial era as one of the city's public markets. By 1803, Congo Square had become famous because people were coming from all over this country. People were coming from other countries to see what they've been hearing about with these dancing African peoples with the drumming and everything. Became famous gatherings of enslaved Africans who drummed, danced, sang, and traded on Sunday afternoons. By 1819, the gatherings numbered as many as 500 to 600. That's incorrect, and even the city of New Orleans recognized that because there were more people enslaved at that time. And you have to figure, if you are enslaved under those conditions, when you got a day off, you going to party. So there was more. So they're actually going to change this sign to reflect, and I'm going to read you some stuff that'll give you some numbers. But you also, to go on, among the most famous dances were the Bambula. The Bambula, Bam means one and Bula means many, right? And so we're talking about almost like Sankofa, this going back, reflecting on the many years of ancestral knowledge through blood memory. The Kalinda, the Congo, the Kalinda was really popular in Venezuela before it came because, again, bringing Africans to the Southern Islands, and then they come here. You're acculturated on the Southern Islands, and then you bring them here because the slave trade was a business. They knew, even though they didn't tell me growing up, that they actually knew where these people were from and what they did. So as a business, you knew, oh, this person, we're selling these people, egregious. But this person is looking for somebody who's a blacksmith. Oh, you want these people because they specialize in that. Oh, you want these people because they specialize in quilt making or in basket weaving or in cultivating rice or in planting this or that. They knew it was a business. You ain't just selling people to do anything. You knew who you were dealing with, which again was one of the reasons they stopped bringing Angolans, because they was fighting too much. So anyway, all right, these Africans' cultural expression gradually developed into the Mardi Gras Indians. If you don't know anything about the Mardi Gras Indians, please look that up. Traditions. And the second line, I'm gonna show you a little bit of the second line in a minute, talk a little bit about that. If you really wanna know, you gotta hit up my girl, Michelle Gibson. She's in Dallas now, but the work, she's from New Orleans, and the work that she's done on second line is absolutely amazing. Nobody is touching her. You want to hit her up. You can find her on Instagram, Michelle Gibson. And then it talks about going to jazz and rhythm and blues. And let's be clear, rhythm and blues in the time after music was, and I know I'm kind of jumping around, but at the time when music was known as race music to specify that it was coming from black people, as it got more popular in the white communities and they wanted to now market and sell it, they came up with rhythm and blues. Rhythm and blues actually meant that this side of the record was rhythm, it was faster, and this side of the record was blues, it was a little slower. You could still dance to both, but that's what rhythm and blues meant. The record was rhythm one side, blues the other side. We just say R&B now. All right, so give you a little more context. This is a map of New Orleans, right? You have Esplanade Street over here. You got Canal Street here, Esplanade, Canal Street over here. You got the North Rampart Street, and this was a wall, right? Because you're trying to defend yourself in the open waters, but everything else was surrounded inside this wall. And this is the French Quarter. But right around here, sorry for the fire trucks if y'all can hear that. Right around here was a doorway that would take you into Congo Square, which is now referred to as Louis Armstrong Park. And this is where they would gather outside of that. And as a matter of fact, when the evening went down, they would shoot off cannons to signify that people were supposed to come back. Some people figured out how to escape when they got out in this area. So to keep going, this is an image, and you can see back here, you can see the wall, right? You see the traditional drums being played. This is dancing the kalinda. Some people disagree with this image because it's too much of the European structure in terms of the verticality in the body. There is a statue in Louis Armstrong Park that is a better depiction that people say that shows more of the Africanist aesthetic, shows more of the asymmetrical structure in the body. But you see the gathering, and you see behind them the wall on Rampart Street, and you see the churches and buildings on the other side of that wall. And this is supposed to be in Congo Square. This is an image of Luther Gray. He's a historian and a drummer in New Orleans. That is my then assistant Renu and myself standing in front of one of the ancestral trees. These trees were planted in the 1860s. A lot of people go down there and hug and pray on them, but be careful because them caterpillars are huge and they do bite. But this is in Congo Square, and this is Congo Square, the concrete that it's been concrete now, and you can see the ancestral trees all around that area. Now I'm going to read a little bit of something before we go further into this. Let's see, let's go to all right, where are we at here? I want this one. All right, yeah, let's go here. So this book, right? This is The World That Made New Orleans. Boom, boom, boom. The World That Made New Orleans. Checking the chat really quick. Trying to keep up with y'all as well. All right, Kevin, thank you for sharing that book. Appreciate it. It's all about where we can get some knowledge. All right, so this book by Ned Sublett. This is The World That Made New Orleans, From Spanish Silver to Congo Square. And I'm just going to read 3 sections out of this. Not much. We'll keep it simple. French period, 5,950 plus. The ship in 1758, 122 Angolans embarked captives. Right, just little sound bites in here. Bringing different languages. Okay, so a wide variety of African ethnicities arrived simultaneously during the relatively brief period of the Spanish slave importation, bringing different languages, religions, and drums. So a chaotic cultural flow happened quickly. But the largest single African group in the Spanish New Orleans came from the Congo Angola region, the most heavily slaved territory in Africa, and one of the slaved for the longest period of time. Right, just giving you all a little bit of that. Just think about that and then listen to some of these numbers. Let me see, I wanna go to here. All right, going here, the development of, and this kind of takes us back to what I was showing y'all with the pat, the development of slap dance or patting juba, it's out of the Key Congo, with some of the same techniques as hand drumming, says much about the resilience of African American culture in the Angolan American territories, but it also speaks to the, excuse me, sorry about that, a little bit of water. Also speaks to how things were necessary at that time in this encipherment. So that's speaking more to the pat clap, like I was saying, when you, it's not that people didn't pat clap before the drums were taken away. We already did that. But in cases like South Carolina, when the drums are certainly taken away, you're going to rely more on playing the bones. And when I drop this PowerPoint, I'll go back to the bones and some of the percussive instruments that I played just to make sure you can see them. Sometimes I'll be worried about this little box. All right, and then lastly, let's add to this. What was I looking at? What was I looking at over here? I forget what I might have been looking at on this page, but I do have some stuff highlighted, not necessarily highlighted for this talk. So here we go. Here's something. If you're wondering whether Africans communicated among themselves during slavery times, look at how dances traveled from port to port for centuries. These transnational dances included in the 16th and early 17th century the Zarabadan. This is a dance that went to England, and the Chaconi, both of which crossed from Africa to the New World via Havana into Spain, becoming the Saraband, Sarabande, and the Chaconi just has two ends. In the 17th century, the Kalinda and the Bambula, so also talking about the Kalinda and Bambula. In the 18th and possibly earlier, the Chica dance. Some of this connects to the tango and to the mambo. So these dances are being done. And to the point, yes, when you're here, you're going to have a different lived experience because it's a different situation. You have to have a different sensibility to how you navigate and negotiate your cultural identity. But the practices don't stop. The mere fact that when you look into it, and some of y'all have heard me say this before that have been on my channels when I'm talking on Instagram, the mere fact if you go to like a Baptist church, the reason that they're dancing in white is paying homage to Obatala and the Orishas, right? And going down to the water for a baptism is the marriage between Obatala and Yemenya in the water. So but you go to a church and ask them why they're wearing white. Ask them why they're doing a two-step coming down an aisle. They don't know that that's connected to the ring shout. I've been to a lot of churches where I've spoken and they no clue that what they're doing is a part of the ring shout, and the ring shouts didn't always go counterclockwise in a circle. Sometimes they're linear. And so they're doing that is connected to that. They're paying homage to the Orishas, it's connected to that, but they don't know because they've forgotten that part. And they might think, well, we created something new. You're actually building off of what was already in your blood memory, and it's just being represented in a new way. That's what's happening. So in New Orleans, these things are coming. People are bringing their traditions with them, and they might have to make a shift because the system here is set up completely different. So when you think about the funeral and the processions that happen in Congo and the way that they do it, this is the same thing as you look at in the second line, the processions that happen. Now, in Africa, in the Congo, they believe that when someone transitions, you send them off with music so that they'll be happy. Because if they're not, they might come back as another entity and another sense of energy and disturb your peace. So you send them off with music. In New Orleans, they do the same thing. One, the second line, where they literally walk you to the site, to the grave site. But I want to take a little clip of this. This is kind of long. I'm gonna cut it down. So we're going to look at the transitional celebration, because in New Orleans, life is celebrated, and death is honored in New Orleans. And this clip here is of Kerwin James. He was a tuba player. And I want y'all to see what the celebration is, just sending them off with music. So these traditions, like I said, you go to Gullah Islands, you go to New Orleans, you will see the impact of African ritual and traditions here in America that kept going. You can find it in our language, you can find it in everything. So it's understanding what you're looking at. There is no new, right? When you look at all the different aesthetics, as a matter of fact, this book here, this is by Luna. Let me get the full name for y'all. Luana. Just as Luana. So you want to look for this. What makes that black? This is, my Wi-Fi is acting crazy. So what makes that black? This is talking about the Africanist aesthetics. This is talking about a lot of cultural modes in here, right? So let me see if I can find that one section that drops a couple of things. So you're talking about the admiration of black and brown. You're talking about the aesthetic of cool. You're talking about the angularity, art intelligence, balanced asymmetry, blood memories, right? You're talking about all these different things. This is part of the African aesthetic. So this is what we're talking about when we say what people are doing now is connected to what came before. It is the structure, like in dance. When you understand the bounces, they're in everything, but there's an aesthetic approach to it. So there's a bounce in ballet. It ain't the way that we bounce here. It's different, but there's a bounce in hip hop dances. There's the same bounce exists in jazz, but in hip hop, it's slower, it drops a little heavier. In jazz, it's lighter and it's faster. So in hip hop, we're like boom, boom, boom. In jazz, you're like boom, 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 right? So you go from these quarter notes to eighth notes in terms of your movement. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, right? You go from quarter notes to eighth notes. Those are part of the aesthetics. The dances that we have are because of these structures, right? This is why you can look at a dance like, and y'all have heard me say this before, this is why you can look at a dance like the Pullet. The original name of the dance is called the Pullet. It's from 1927. Jack Wiggins, tap dancer, created this dance called the Pullet that got renamed Tachyani. Y'all have heard me say this, but I know we got a couple new people in here to me, so they don't know this, or they may not know this. I'm not trying to be condescending. I don't know everybody. I don't know what you know. But the Tachyani is no different than the 1960s dog. It's structurally set up the same thing. So when you're understanding dances, you're looking for the root structure in the movement versus where the improvisation happens. And I address improvisation as eternally meditating, playfully revealing objective variables, right? Improv. Internal meditation, playfully revealing objective variables. So there's a root structure in Tachyani that you see in the dog, but then it allows you to shift, that you see the same root structure in the nene. And then we're talking about, and again, for the new people that have been here may not know this, we're talking about the gestural practice, so having an understanding of movement knowledge, how movement knowledge comes with other kinds of cultural knowledge, right? This is this blending, these are things that happen. So the dances don't come out of space vacuum. When you look at the nene is a dance that comes out of Georgia around Stone Mountain from young kids called We Are Tunes. I know y'all heard me say it before, but the dance is a reflection of the 1990s when we used to say talk to the hand. These kids just made it into a dance. They named it the Nene after Shanae, the character on Martin Lawrence, in case anybody in here has never heard that before. And they created this dance. You have to understand what's happening in that environment what are the colloquialisms in that environment to understand what they're doing and what it means and what's the value behind it. And then you can look for the deep rooted structures in it. They don't disappear. Culture is in the body, and we pass it on to our to our next generation. So getting back, sorry, digressions. Getting back to this funeral, this is Kerwin James. I'm not gonna play it all, but I want y'all to see this celebration in relationship to what Congo is saying, that we send our, once you transition and become an ancestor, you send them off with songs. So look at this. See how they rocking that joint? They like rocking that joint. Like he in there just floating around. But you see that sense of celebration that we have. And to Kevin, thank you. Yes, Robert Ferris done a lot of research. As a matter of fact, his one book, Flash of the Spirit, Robert Ferris has done significant research. So even when you look at hip hop and people talking about, pouring one out for the dead homies, that's libations. That's an African tradition. That is libations, right? It shows up in different ways. When you look at the fascination of Black folks going to the strip club and making it rain, in African tradition, when somebody is doing the thing damn well, you throw money at them, you throw garb at them, you acknowledge their ability to do this thing by presenting them with gifts. That is no different. I know it's a little skewed, but it's no different than these people going to strip club talking about making it rain. That is part of the tradition. Pouring some out for the dead homies is pouring out libations. That is part of the cultural tradition. It's just that we have this amalgamation of multiple cultural happenings that you may not necessarily see on the continent back then. You may not necessarily see it now, but that is what it is coming from. That is what has laid the groundwork for us to have the cultural practices that we now have. They just developed in a new line, but they are tethered to that African ritual and tradition. And to tear it away from that is just ridiculous. So another good book by Robert Ferris Thompson, Flash of the Spirit. Good stuff. Good research. Again, appreciate you, Kevin, for throwing that in there. All right, let's keep going. Here's a clip. This is from 1982. Looking at another second line New Orleans celebration, but this one is juxtaposed with African cultural practices. I'm not sure where in Africa they're pulling this from, but they're just making the similarities pretty much like La Chapelle did with the documentary Rise when he showed I'm not sure what African tribe he showed, and they were painted and wrestling and making a comparison to crumping. But which I thought was a little unfair because you're not telling me where on the continent this is from and giving me context behind it, but I understand. So here's one more clip on this. It's low, so.
This is the chaos with Black tradition right out of Africa. This is how West Africans parade with the band and integral part of the dancing crowd.
I'm just showing y'all a little bit, and that's a second line celebration. That was from 1982. We'll just look at the beginning of this. This is from a documentary called Make It Funky. You can get that documentary on iTunes. It was really dope. It talks about New Orleans second line. The Neville brothers are in it, very prominent people. They talk about Danny Barker, who was a significant pioneer in jazz music in New Orleans. But we're just going to look at the beginning of this. I think they say that phrase that I was sharing with you. I want to make sure I got it right. So,
the music of New Orleans was shaped by the multicultural influences that go back hundreds of years to the city's colonial rule by the Spanish and the French, and from the slaves and immigrants from Africa and the Caribbean islands.
Here in New Orleans, people will follow a parade from beginning to end, whether it's a funeral or just a regular second line. And they don't want to just walk along, they want to dance along. And it's been like that since the infusion of the African rhythms in Congo Square until today. However people are introduced or get their music, that is what they want to hear, that's what they want to see. So they don't walk along with the parade, they parade along with it.
Our jazz funerals reflect the cultural tradition whereby life is celebrated and death is honored. The bands brought folks out of their homes onto the streets, creating a second line of people paying their last respects.
Second line has, several meanings. One being the folks who are at a funeral because it's a relative or someone they loved or they really cared about the deceased. They're on that first wave. But those on the second line, the second wave of people, they're there just for the party, for the music, to dance along, to get to the reception, to eat and drink and whatever.
So y'all should check that out. Make It Funky, really dope documentary. I'm gonna get back to, again, it's a fusion stuff. Some stuff that I offered to Tariq in my post, that early post that y'all saw, and he tried to clown me, I guess, and this idea of making funny voices. Oh, we're not doing that. It's not connected to that. He also said that about in that same comment where I mentioned one of the Irish reel steps that becomes the cake dance, the cake walk, and there was the chalk line walk. I think one of the clips I'm gonna show you is actually a chalk line walk, but just related to the cake walk. And at that time, if you want a cake, it wasn't a cake that sometimes we think about a cake. It was a hoe cake, meaning it was a cornmeal cake baked on a clean garden hoe out in the heat. That's why it's called a hoe cake. But this is what Tariq had to say on his live. Again, for those of you that have been there in the beginning, if you haven't been in the beginning, after I saw the film, I made a comment on his live the next day. I mentioned about how the connections of these dances. He was like, "How do you see it?" I'm like, if you really want to know, I'll show you. I'm a dancer and I teach dance, and it's not a game. This is my lane. This is what I do. Non-dancers are not going to tell me more about dance than me. So he didn't respond back to that. He just decided to go live and, try to reference me and this stuff. And this is not a diss against the brother. This is just what he did. So I'm like, well, then let me show you. If you don't want to call back, then I'll just show the people so that they have some reference.
So yeah, we're not doing this thing where we create something and then we gotta let everybody tack on their little thing. And that professor was like, yeah, the cakewalk dance, that was the Irish heel dance. That was similar to the Irish heel dance. And I said, dude, listen. The people who created the cakewalk dance, the foundation of Black Americans who were enslaved, they created it so they would mock the white slave owners. It was mocking the way they would walk and dance, and they made their own funky, groovy dance style. And the cakewalk actually became the first international dance craze that we created. We're not giving nobody else credit for that. Foundation of Black Americans, we created the first international dance crazes.
Now, I'm not a flyer of the Foundation of Black American thing. I don't subscribe to that. I'm not saying nobody else should. That ain't my thing. But yes, we created dances that across the world are done. However, the cakewalk wasn't the first one. And if you think you know more about the cakewalk than me, stop it. You don't even dance. Yes, of course I know that the enslaved people were mocking it. I know what step they were actually mocking. And it was an Irish step that they were making fun of. Now, just because they flipped it doesn't do much. So the same way that you said that Puerto Ricans that came later, this is to your point, Tariq, Puerto Ricans came later, and you're not giving them credit for adding on or innovating on top of something these other people that you said black people created, or black people did create hip hop and breaking and stuff. They were the first to do it. We know this. But you're not going to give them credit for the new movements that they hadn't done yet. Like I said, they didn't do 2000s. 2000, I'm not saying the Puerto Ricans created 2000s, but 2000s wasn't a thing. Air flares wasn't a thing at that time. And I know eccentric dances because I do jazz dance as well. Authentic jazz dancing, not that falsy stuff. That step hadn't been done. And there are some other steps that hadn't been done. So they don't get credit. So then how do you credit African people, enslaved African people, who are taking a step that somebody else did, but they're flipping it? That's the same as Puerto Ricans flipping something that black folks did. But Puerto Ricans don't get credit, but black people get credit for flipping somebody else's cultural dance. The Irish reels and jigs are not just some step, that's a cultural step. So let's look at that. This is the actual Irish step. I can't do it as good as an Irish person. I know how to do it, but I suck. So I just use the clip. So I specialize in American black dances. Now, this is the clip that they were imitating, or this is the step from the Irish reel that they were imitating. Right? So they put satire on this and making fun of them. You know, most people know this, making fun of them. They looked at it and wanted to learn it, and it became a thing. Now, the different ways, this is a chalk walk line. Burt Williams is actually in the end of this, but I'm not going to show that. I'm going to show this, the first couple coming down, and the one cat drops down into, does, oh man, well, I can't think of the name, Kazakhsky's, which is a Russian traditional dance that did get popular in America for a while. So here's a version of the cakewalk as, you know, reimagined by black folks. No sound. So that's what they did to make fun of that Irish step. And tap dancing is the first dance that you can say, actually the ring shout, some people say, is the first. But tap dancing would be the first to go global, right? And tap dancing comes from the English clog dance, is mixed with the Irish jigs and reels. It's also mixed with the Scottish Highlander, and is presented in a way that Africans use their sensibility and time and rhythm and their groundedness to change it, right? So that's what changed it. That's what became the first international dance, would be tap dancing. And it dates back in America, at least in the written text, into the late 1700s, early 1800s. Some people try to give the credit to Henry William Lane, who was born in 1825, but there's mention of tap dancing in 1805 on the flatboats when it was called flatboating. I know some of y'all probably saw me when I did that talk on the origins of tap and the cross-pollination of these different dances. So yes, when you look at Irish, the English clog, and the Scottish Highlander, you see the verticality in the body, right? This upright level. What the African did was they brought it down. It was more grounded, because now you're talking about the Africanist aesthetic, which is an orientation to the earth, which is talking about percussive rhythms, asymmetrical, having something in your hand, a sense of community attached to that. These aesthetics, and those aren't the only ones, but those aesthetics are different than the Eurocentric aesthetics. So you see that change in it, but again, that was inspired by this culmination of things, because we did have an influx of Irish people here. They did consider Irish people low lives the way they did consider Africans low lives. As a matter of fact, one of the phrasings for Irish and Black, and I'm sure some of y'all have heard me talk about this before, is they refer to Irish people as they refer to Irish people as niggers turned inside out, and they refer to Black people as smoked Irish, right? And this you can deal with how the Irish became white, because again, white and Black is a context, a construct. Nobody is truly white or Black. Every human being is a shade of brown, from the lightest to the darkest. We are all in that shade. We have different lived cultural experiences because we lived in different places. Things grew in the way that they did. We prospered in the way that we did, and things happen that separate us. But there's no hierarchy in the human being experience. We do that. We are all, in my belief, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And to look at what is happening in different places is to recognize our humanity and say, oh, well, we don't do that, but they do it. And I understand because I had a conversation with them. So we're looking at these things happening, and that structure in the dance comes down. It's more Africanized, and then it develops, and then people add stuff onto it. The trenches were created by a guy named Toot Davis, right? And over the tops were created by a guy named Toot Davis. He didn't create tapping, but he innovated on top of it. And that's why we give credit to people who have added on. So for me, I give credit to Puerto Ricans who have added on. I don't care if they didn't create it. We created it, but I'm still going to credit somebody that added on. You know, the first person to dunk a basketball didn't create the game of basketball, but I'm going to credit him for dunking, right? Doing something that wasn't done, but you didn't create the game. So everybody plays this role in this human experience. We're all adding to it. And we do want to be clear who added what, who invented what, and who took it to another level, if they did take it to another level, right? All these different things. So let me give y'all one more, and then I'm gonna get to the gang thing, because that was extra. So here's one more, the camel walk. The camel walk comes from a dance in Ghana called the Adowa. At least as far as us dance scholars are concerned, this is what we're looking at. Now, I'm going to show you the timeline. And if anybody got questions, if you feel like I skipped something, holla at me. So, what I want you to pay attention to, again, the Adowa is a full-on thing. It's not compartmentalized. African dances became compartmentalized once enslavement happened and they were brought here. Not just here, they were brought to the Southern Islands and then here. Most Africans were taken to the Southern Islands first, acculturated, and then they came here, which is why people bring the conversation of Cuba and Haiti, Dominican Republic, and Puerto Rico in it, because in Brazil, they were there and then came here. The ones that did come here. And so when you look at like Cuban music, you're looking at Spanish guitar with African drums. They're just there. So the conga comes from the bembe. Right? So you have to look at all these different things. Now, for this, I want you to look at this little girl's feet. Pay attention to her feet. What you see is the progression of her movement where one foot goes behind the other, right? That's part of the camel walk. The camel walk can also be flat without that hooked step. But then the hook step came a little later. There's another step in the Adowa that survived and became part of what we call snake hips, but it's also, there's a way you can do it where it still looks like the camel walk and a way you can do it where it's snake hips. So this is this, and I think there's some audio that came with this video.
Number 2, we have the Adowa dance. Adowa is by far the most widespread and frequently performed social dance of the Akan people of Ghana. The Akan are located in Ashanti, Brong Ahafo, Eastern, Central, and parts of the Volta regions of Ghana.
So again, Ghana, part of the Ivory Coast of people that were brought to the Gullah Islands. These dances are coming here and they are surviving and they are morphing, but this is where they're coming out of. Before they even get here, we look at the King Sailor dance in Trinidad, and you see that same
moving. Especially when he slows down. Watch it. Camel walk. That camel walk was just without the hook. Now, they didn't call it the camel walk. It's called the King Sailor dance because, again, you're still dealing with the dances that are coming from ports and the influences and things that are happening, right? It's a long story. But here's the clip that Tariq showed in his film. Again, these are the first 3 black men ever to be put on film. This was shot in Thomas Edison's studio in Orange, New Jersey. These is, you want to see Joe Rostas go across the screen first. After Joe Rostas, you're going to see, well, this might just be Joe Rostas. If it's all 3 of them, then I'll explain. So it's Joe Rostas here, if you can see my arrow. This is Denny Telever, who's doing Patting Juba. And this is Walter Wilkins, who's blowing a harmonica. You're going to see Joe Rostas do the flat version of the camel walk, which looks like a hop. Denny Telever comes in with some shuffles, and he goes into a fall off the log, which comes out of Ireland, and he goes into a breakdown, which is one of the steps you might have saw during a corn harvest. That was one of the breakdowns. Breakdowns were anything that took you to the floor. Walter Wilkins comes in with some fancy shuffling footwork of his own, and then the tape ran out that they were using, and so it stopped. Now, that camel walk version became slow, and it became really popular when Gertrude Pridgett was popular, Ma Rainey, and her song CC Rider was the song that everybody did the camel walk to. It's a blues song. Just want to let y'all hear a piece of it. So if you almost liken that tempo to the way the King Sailor dance was being danced, when you danced the camel walk to this, it was very slow. It almost fit into the slow drag dances that were happening at that time. Now, we talk about asymmetrical movement. This is Leon James. We're in the 40s now, right? This clip was from 1894. This dance is from before that, but cameras didn't exist until 1894. We didn't have motion picture cameras, so we got to deal with the written text and some images that people drew and whatnot. And again, going back to the Adobe, which is older than that. So that asymmetrical look of the camel walk you see here. And let me see what's clip. This is Al Minns doing the camel walk. I think he might do a Charleston step in here, maybe a fall off the log. No sound. There's that camel walk. Fall off the log. Syncopated. Similar to a little girl. Again, you see the foot going behind. You see it syncopated with that step in there, with that time step. Now, in the 40s, 1957, Chuck Willis comes out with a remake of Ma Rainey's song, CC Rider. He makes his own version called CC Rider. What is the popular dance to do to that? It's the camel walk stroll, right? You had the camel walk step. By the time he comes into play, it's slow. It's back to a slower pace. It's not a swing step like in jazz, a fast swing step. It's slow, and this is how it sounds. So people are doing it, and this is like a basement party where you put the blue light and the red light on, or you put a handkerchief over the white light, and you got the girls, the guys in the basement, and they doing the camel walk stroll. And the way that you did the camel walk stroll is you had the girls line up on this side and the guys line up on this side, and you met in the middle and you strolled down the line. Does that sound familiar? Because that's where the Soul Train line comes from. Don Cornelius, when doing his show before he could get all the big groups, featured his dancers. He took the camel walk stroll, renamed it the Soul Train line, and that's what you're doing. Because the early Soul Train, you dance with your partner going down the line. The later Soul Train, he split the lines. That's a long story why he actually did that in terms of camera time. But the short story is that he split the lines because the less time on camera, it means that you don't have to pay them dancers residuals, but that's a whole other conversation. So when you first saw the Soul Train line, you saw one line, guy and girl meets, dance down. Later on, they split the line, guys over here, girls over here. But that's what he did. Don Cornelius said that himself, that he reached back into the dance that he did when he was young and restructured it for this. Now, others have taken that on, and this is how you see when people monetize Black culture, when they take it outside of the bubble. But this happens like quickly. I'm not saying it should happen. We understand how these things work. But as soon as it leaves the community, it can become something else. But this is some white teenagers in Idaho on a TV show called 17 in 1958. Chuck Willis' version came out in 1957. 1958, you see it on a TV show, and they look terrible, but bless their heart. I'm not showing much of this, just so y'all know. You listen to a song named Stroll, Camel Walk Stroll, by a group called the Diamonds, and you see what they're doing, that step behind, as little girl was doing, as we saw so far. And so when Dick Clark saw how popular the dance was, and everybody was doing it to Chuck Willis's CC Rider, his influence in the music industry, he said that the dance doesn't have a song. So he got Otis Redding and he got Clyde Otis and Nancy Lee songwriters to write a song called The Stroll. He gave it to the group The Diamonds in Toronto, and that's who you heard singing. They're singing a song, The Stroll. So he took the camel walk stroll, made this song, boom, boom. They look nervous and they ain't too swift with it. But that's 1958. 1969, at the Palace Theater, Sammy Davis Jr. has James Brown on, and you see them doing the camel walk stroll. Again, taking us all the way back to that little girl.
Wait a minute, brother. You know the old soulful dance they call the camel walk? Yeah. You remember the camel walk? I know the camel walk. Yeah, brother. Hey. Yeah. Can you do the camel walk right here? I can try. You don't mind it? I don't mind. You don't mind it? I'll try to get it on. Camel walk, make it good.
And you see now, James goes on and does his version too. Now, but you see that foot pattern that you see with Sammy Davis Jr. is still there. There is another clip. I don't think I have it on here. If I do, I'll play it. I don't. There's another clip of Penguin, whose real name is Fred Barry, who most people know him as Rerun. He did the camel walk on one time when he was dancing with the Lockers. He was an original Locker, member of the Lockers. He does a camel walk stroll when they were on Soul Train one time. I don't have that in here, so I can't show it. This is a really short clip of Janet Jackson doing the camel walk stroll, because who did she get it from? Her brother. Who did her brother get it from? Charlie Atkins. See, Charlie Atkins didn't work with kids groups, so the Jacksons would sit on the step while he taught the Temptations and others, and Jackie Jackson would put their choreography together for the Jackson 5 based on what Charlie Atkins did. But this is really short. I think she might do it twice. That's all you got. And of course, Michael still did it. So when we talk about how it's not, you didn't have to see a dance, right? You didn't have to see it in its origin state, where it originated from. But these things are passed down because we emulate the people that's older than us. We emulate the people that become celebrities and big time stars. And we might not know where they're getting it from, but we'll imitate them and not knowing that we're imitating something that's really old, right? I think Kevin mentioned, I'm like looking over ever so often. He mentioned something about capoeira. I have footage of capoeira, the original state of capoeira, when it was the ostrich dance in Angola, and what the berimbau looked like before it became the berimbau that we know, and the footage of them doing the dance, the ostrich dance, which again, because of slave trade, traveled, it changed. Once it hits Brazil, it becomes a thing to defend themselves. But you see this ground movement, so it's nothing's new under the sun. You see this ground movement if you go to Martinique. It's called Agya. It's a fighting dance, looks just like capoeira, but capoeira looks just like the ostrich dance. You see this in Haiti as the rah-rah. You see it. As a matter of fact, talk about nothing new under the sun. I didn't put this in here. I thought I did, but I didn't. This is a book. This comes from London. This is how to become a comedian. This is by a gentleman named Lupino Lane. It's a really hard book to get. I got to thank my peoples out in London that brought this to me. I asked them to search for it. They found it. They brought it to me. Illustrated by Cecil Orr. And this goes to the eccentric dances that I was talking about in the jazz idiom. And what you will see here, this book came out, this is the second edition. The first edition came out in 1945. This thing was so popular, the second edition, which is this one, came out in 1945. Well, you know what? And I didn't put it here, and you're not going to be able to see it on this. I'll try to show it when I get out of this PowerPoint. But I'll read it to you. I'll read this to you. So it's lined, if you can see this, it's illustrated by Cecil Orr. You probably can't see it. Where's my camera? It's illustrated by Cecil Orr. It's a bunch of movements, right? And if you want to be a successful comedian, this is why when you look at some of the old movie musicals and you see the slapstick fall down comedy and people tripping and doing all these crazy things to grab your attention, they were funny. They were to make you laugh. And this one here, they're describing, this is the name of it, Spin on the Head. Is managed by the performer falling straight back up onto their head and reaching the floor, pushing with one shoulder to give the body a twist. Pushing with one shoulder and to give the body a twist. It is advisable to practice this with a padded cap. When you see b-boys spinning with a spin cap today, I have seen Albert Egbert of the Brothers Egbert do a complete double pirouette on his head. Now, there is footage of, oh man, I can't think of his name. John De Niro. Is it John De Niro? I got his book somewhere in here. I have footage in my documentary that I put out my documentary in 2000, I put up 2006. It's going to be on my website soon. It was on YouTube, but YouTube took it down because I don't have the rights to the music, so they took it down. But I had a picture of Danilo doing it in a movie called Wild Boys of the Road that came out in 1933. And you see him doing about 3 pirouettes. He drops down, he does a head rotation, he pops up, he freezes, and he's like, that's how much. There's no dancing in the film, but only at that clip at the end of the film. He was a miscreant. He was an adolescent youth running around and doing all kind of crazy things. And the judge didn't put him in jail, so he was happy. And to show how happy he was, he did a round off back tuck. He did a round off back handspring back tuck into a pencil drill head spin, 3 of them, popped up on his foot and was like, that's much. This is also what b-boys call a coin drop. This is called twist around the neck. If you are able, I'll try to show it when I go. If you're able to get this book, really interesting, the kind of stuff they talk about that you had to do back in the day if you want to be a comedian. These ground movements are not dedicated to one group of people. Everybody in the world has ground movements. So to think that black folk just created ground movements is ridiculous. To think any group, one group of people created ground movements is absolutely ridiculous. We all created ground movements. We all influence each other. When you are in close proximity to somebody else, you will be a part of what they're doing, even if you don't want to. Now, I'm gonna go back. This is the last thing. Thank y'all for hanging out with me. So, this, and again, let me be clear. I am not in no way trying to attack another black man. Nah. Like I said, I don't subscribe to everything, but that's okay. We can have disagreements, but I think you all should go see his film. I think I read books I don't like because I want to know what people are thinking and what kind of dialogue I'm going to be in. And I'm interested to know the perspective that other people have. We don't have to agree, but I paid my money to go see the film. I had a good time watching the film. I agree with a lot of the things in the film, but there was just some stuff I was just like, yeah, no, that's not accurate. And again, when I tried to present this to him and offered to show it, he want to go live and try to clown me. So I don't dig that. That ain't cool. There's no need for that. So I'm gonna show two things. We're gonna end it on this gang episode that's in the clip. And mind you, I was on the phone with some members of the Black Stage. Yeah, was that yesterday? Yesterday or the day before. So this is Tariq talking.
It's up to us to stop all the lies and the BS, man. Me as a fan of hip hop, one of the reasons why I really wanted to make the film, I just got tired of the damn lies.
Okay, I agree with you. We get tired of this, but we got to make sure we on point with what we talking about. So, like, hip hop is interesting, and before I even move on, going back to the whole I've heard narrative, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, but I heard narratives of like this is not connected to the African diaspora, has nothing to do with it. It does, because the African diaspora is what leads us back to Africa, and Africa has to do with it. And if not, and you're a fan of hip hop, then it's like, okay, I guess poor righteous teachers were wrong. I guess Nations of Gods and Earth were wrong. I guess Islam was wrong. I guess X-Clan was wrong. Jungle Brothers was wrong. Like, no, we are tethered to that. It comes out of that. But to move forward, to get to the gang part.
We're Puerto Ricans.
But the Puerto Ricans at the time in New York, many of them were on the same racist shit that we have a lot of people out here on. Puerto Ricans were not rocking with black people in large numbers like that. In fact, the Puerto Rican gangs, they were walking around with swastikas on their damn jackets. The Puerto Ricans were called Nazis by some of the cats out there because they were aligning themselves with that white supremacist ideology. They were not rocking with brothers. You listen to interviews with Grandmaster Caz, he even said, hey man, it was only 1 or 2 Puerto Ricans rocking with us. They were racist against us and they were playing the congas and they weren't really going to the parties like that. It was only 1 or 2. So we're not going to give credit to 1 or 2 folks who wandered off into a party.
So here is footage of DSR, that's his name, from the Savage Nomads. Let's unpack this a little bit so y'all understand. You can't say definitive statements like the Puerto Ricans. That's a definitive statement that suggests all Puerto Ricans. You have to be specific and clear because all Puerto Ricans are not doing this. But let's unpack this because he used footage from 80 Blocks from Tiffany's. I don't know if people know he used footage from 80 Blocks from Tiffany. I know, I got all those clips. I got Flying Cut Sleeves and 80 Blocks from Tiffany. You all go on YouTube and find 80 Blocks from Tiffany's. Find, because the Bronx area was 80 blocks from Tiffany's, the store. 80 Blocks from Tiffany's. Find Flying Cut Sleeves. Find Rubble Kings. These are speaking to the gangs and explaining it. So this is DSR from that same film where he pulled some material from.
I understand we was going to pull a geese in this bar owned by the mafia, and something happened, I don't know, and anyway, I woke up 11 days later in the hospital. I heard that I fell out the window, but I really think somebody pushed me out the window. So I just woke up in the hospital and like I was paralyzed, I didn't know nothing, and then a couple of the nomads came to the hospital, and like I knew them right away, and then my memory started coming back.
let's just stop right here. So that's DSR sitting underneath a flag with a swastika. DSR is black. Now, the Savage Nomads, yes, they did wear swastikas on their flying cut sleeves. They did have flags, but they were wearing them as part of, according to when I talked to the Black Spades, they were wearing it because they were anti-authoritarianism. They were into flagging all the ills of society because they were against that. And they used that the same way that that symbol is a symbol of peace in China, and Hitler turned it on its side and used it for his propaganda. They moved forward like, well, we're going to use this to represent that we are against all of this stuff. Now, Savage Nomads, Savage Skulls, Imperial Bachelors, and the Imperial Bachelors have a number of crews. They're all Black and Puerto Rican crews. So let's keep looking. This is a clip of the Savage Nomads, Savage Skulls. This person here with the tam and his hand up, it's not a Hitler symbol. So get that out your mind already. That's Marvin, AKA Hollywood, president of, to my understanding, president of Savage Skulls. I'm not sure the gentleman's name next to him, but he's Puerto Rican. Marvin is Black. Here's another picture of the Savage Skulls, and you see one Black person there, there's another Black person there, another Black person there, another Black person there. Puerto Rican, Puerto Rican, Puerto Rican, Puerto Rican, Puerto Rican, right? So it's more Black people here than there's Puerto Ricans. But the narrative that's being pushed is that it's 1 or 2 Puerto Ricans with a bunch of Blacks. It's 1 or 2 Blacks with a bunch of Puerto Ricans. But it don't matter. What matters is they're together. 2 marginalized groups of people who are getting the shit kicked out of them by society, and they come together under many different circumstances. But let's keep going. Let's hear Marvin speak for a hot second. This is the 1971 peace treaty meeting that happened. I'm gonna just play y'all Marvin speaking.
Who was at the motherfucking fight, man, when Black Benji got struck down, when he was hollering like, wow, why should we all fight, man? We all Black and Puerto Ricans, huh?
Right? So Marvin talked about when he was at the fight, Benji got struck, Black Benji got killed. Black Benji was part of the Ghetto Brothers. It was Black Benji, there was Yellow Benji. Black Benji got killed, and Black Benji was saying, why are we all fighting? We are Blacks and Puerto Ricans. They ran together. To suggest that they did not, that's just false. So, Imperial Bachelors, let's understand, this is the president, Imperial Bachelors. Listen to them.
Like the mafia, man, they've been having something to do for me, man. I've been dealing with them before. But I don't call them the mafia, I call them my friends, man. Like, you know, no matter how white they are, you like, if you want to treat me cool, I'm going to treat you cool. Like, if you need your shoes shined, I shine them, and you shine mine. One hand washes the other. You scratch my back, I scratch yours.
Hey, John, tell him, right on.
Tell me about your colors, the structure of this group, the gang, and so forth.
All right, so I'll tell you, like, the Imperial stands for how we stand. We stand, like, up. And, like, the Bachelors, you know, because we try to be free. As much as possible, we always try to be free. And, like, the reason why we use red, black, and green, because, like, we can't use red, black, and blue, because, like, even though the Puerto Rican flag consists of this, so we have to use red, black, and green, because, like, because the red, white, and blue is, has American flag colors. And so, like, even though the red, black, and green stands for the Puerto Rican people just as much as it stands for us, so we always have to have this Puerto Rican flag to show that we unify with the Puerto Ricans.
Okay, now.
They rocking out to Booker T and the MGs. And I thought, did I not put it in here? Did I delete it? Maybe I deleted it. That was just TSR. Maybe I deleted it, people. Sorry if I did delete this other clip. But you can go to YouTube and look up They should have it on YouTube. You can look up 80 Blocks from Tiffany's. Yeah, I must have deleted it. Apologize for that. So there's another clip I wanted to show you all. I'm actually going to come out of this. Should be able to come out of that. So there's a clip. Matter of fact, we're still dealing with the delay, right? So if you can see me without the PowerPoint, I want you to put in the chat, yeah. Just so I make sure y'all still with me since I closed that out. Because, this is a crazy delay on here, so I apologize for that. But there's another clip in 80 Blocks from Tiffany's. Remember, this is the film. This is an old VHS tape. It's how long I had this shit. I had it since it came out. But I also have a digital copy as well. So, really dope film. Flying Cut Sleeves, also a dope film. Rebel Kings, also a dope film. Those of you that saw my documentary, Everything Remains Raw, we talk a little bit about the gang stuff in there when Wiggles was talking. And so, but there's a clip that I want to add some context to it. There's a clip that Tariq used from 80 Blocks from Tiffany's that shows Jamal, altercation that actually happens between Jamal and Fly of the Savage Skulls, I believe. It might have been Savage Nomads. But they had an altercation over a woman. And Jamal on camera is like, I'm gonna fuck Fly up later. Fly, and they're at the same barbecue, right? It's dumb. I'm mad I don't have it on here. I don't know what happened to it, how it got displaced. Maybe I can just pull it up and show it. But anyway, it was over a grill and they were kind of bickering. Now Jamal's black, Fly's Puerto Rican, Fly's Gestapo, which means kind of like the military in the gang. And their beef is squashed. So there's somebody in the middle. There's this black guy in the clip that Tariq showed, and he was talking about the separatism between blacks and Puerto Ricans. So he showed this altercation between Fly and this other guy who's not Jamal. But if you go past that, 10 seconds, it's a block party where black, Puerto Rican, and white are all out in the Bronx having a good time, dancing with one another, in circles, just in conversation, eating food, cracking jokes, getting in arguments because they ran together. As a matter of fact, I ended the PowerPoint, but there's a clip. Let me see if I can read it. As a matter of fact, I don't want to give everybody's name, but Kenneth from that I talked to who was a member of Black Spades. He sent me this news article from back then. I know you probably can't see me, but or maybe you can. And this is what it's saying. It's 3 of the gang members. I'm not sure what paper this is in, but this is from back in the 70s. 3 of the gang members wound up in Jacobs Hospital after a conflict that they had. Workers reported that one was treated and released. A claim by gang members that 2 junkies were killed because they went. There's a story where they were chasing these junkies, right? The junkies were doing wrong stuff in the neighborhood, and the gangs were retaliating against these junkies being in the neighborhood, and so they got into some kind of fisticuffs. But then it says the Savage Skulls vowed to take revenge. They sought the aid of 3 other local gangs. The 7 Imperial, the seven Immortals, the Savage Nomads, and the Ghetto Brothers, and they got a plan to get together. So even in that, we have context of the gangs working together in some instances. So it's not that they were against each other, and it's not that maybe some people did call the Savage Skulls Nazis. I don't know, but I do know the Savage Skulls was made up of blacks and Puerto Ricans, and they wore swastikas to say that they were anti-authoritarianism. And a lot of the other groups where there were, I think, I'm not even sure if the Golden Guineas or the Turbans were what ethnicity they were, but there were gangs that were primarily Italian and this and that, and then depending on where you are from in Brooklyn or wherever, all these different gangs. But again, I would just say watch statements that are definitive, like the Puerto Ricans, because not all Puerto Ricans, and I'm sure that wasn't the intention, but it's just to show y'all it's clear. Like, because if you walk away from the film, you might think, oh, well, they weren't together, but they were together, and that's what we need to see. We need to see the things that we are harmed by, but we also need to see the truth and accurate statements of what was going on. Because to present it one way and people walk out of a theater and thinking it's that's just causing more unnecessary divide between two groups of people. And obviously there are more than two, but two groups of people who are clearly both dealing with disenfranchisement and marginalization, who have come together, lived together, struggled together. Why we need to separate? I'm just not trying to separate people. I'm just trying to look at the human experience as it is. We have all these issues, but the last thing I'm trying to do is, especially with hip hop culture, push this one away from that one, right? Again, if you want to say that because a lot of these pioneers are from South Carolina or North Carolina, the Carolinas, the people from the Carolinas are from Africa. The stuff that they were doing is documented in retention, and it's passed down. And just because it develops in new ways does not take it away from it being connected to the continent. We have to understand that our culture is rich. It is not something that is 50 years old. It is not something that is 100 years old. It is thousands of years old. And it is passed down through multiple different ways. And we continue this conversation. We build upon that which is there. Hip hop is not something that was created out of nothing. That's the goofiest statement I hear people say. It was created out of nothing. No, it was created out of something, because it's connected to what our ancestors did. It's connected to what we did. It's created out of the lived experience. It is created out of like I said before, the retentions of characteristics that are not bound by time and geography. It comes out of that. That's what we build on. When you think of improvisation, and you say somebody as a dancer, you say somebody's improving, or as a musician, you're improving. You, as a pianist, you have to know how to play the piano in order to improvise. If you don't know how to play the piano, you just can't sit down and start playing a bunch of noise. You have to know the chords. You have to know the structure. You have to know how to put and arrange these things together so it sounds nice. You improvise on top of the information you already have. As dancers, you improvise on top of the information you already have. It is not I plucked it out of the thin air, out of the space vacuum. Nah, hip hop was created out of something. It was created out of the cultural context that exists going back hundreds of years to Africa. Things changed as they got through the southern islands. We had new stuff that added to that. But in its deep-rooted structure, you got to go back, right? I hoped some of this material helps you. Here's a book, How the Irish Became White. That's the author's last name, How the Irish Became White. Really interesting. If you're interested in that, this is the actual atlas, which shows all of the ways and where people came from. It gives you the percentages of how many Africans it was. It gives you all that information. Check this out. But there's always more to be said. I hope that is enough for now. And one other thing, because this is all, I teach this when I'm talking about hip hop in school. I got to break down Clarence Edward Smith, aka Clarence 13X, aka the father. I have to break down the Nations of Gods on Earth, aka 5%ers. But just to talk about influence, now, this is not concrete, but it's probable, right? This part is concrete. In supreme mathematics, I use supreme mathematics all the time. I learned by 5%ers in Far Rockaway, when I used to hang out in Far Rockaway. And supreme mathematics is where we get the word cipher from in hip hop. Cipher is connected, and again, Kevin, what was it? I don't see it right now. There it is, Kevin, aka Mr. K. He talked about Ferris Robert Ferris Thompson, he talks about this with the, he doesn't call it the Kikongo Cosmogram, but it is the Kikongo Cosmogram coming out of Angola, out of the Congo. You look at the ring shout, and there's documented proof. I can bring all kind of books in here, but that people wrote about the ring shout being done in Sierra Leone in the 1700s. The ring shout was one of the things that helped African people cultivate a sense of community and spiritual practice here in these lands. What we do in the cipher comes out of that cosmogram, right? Because you're talking about, well, some of y'all have heard me talk about the cosmogram before, but in short, you're talking about a space where the collective come together and are supporting each other. But it's also a space of water. So that's why the dance floors, we create circles that become sacred ground, because in that space, you can open that portal, which is the crossroads in the cosmogram. You can open that portal for the Loao, the spirit, to come through and be mounted by that spirit. This is the same thing that happens in church. This is the same thing that happens in hoodoo and voodoo and practices in Haiti. This is when we talk about speaking tongues and catching the Holy Spirit. That's the same thing as being mounted by the Loao in Haiti and hoodoo, whether you're talking about candomblé, whether you're talking about Santeria, all these different things throughout Cuba, Brazil, Haiti, here. This is a part of that. But also a part of Supreme Mathematics has a relationship to the Sifret. Get Anatomy of the Spirit, banging book. If I can find this. So the Sifret, y'all can look up the Sifret. I can't give you everything. Y'all need to do some research. SEFIROT, Sifret. So in Supreme Mathematics, you got 10 things, right? You got knowledge, wisdom, understanding. We all know that in hip hop. Knowledge, wisdom, understanding is the first three. 120 degrees, 3 times gives you 360. So you got knowledge, wisdom, understanding. You got culture, freedom, power, refinement. I'm kind of in my power refinement age now. We got equality, God, build, destroy, born, cipher. In the Sifret, the 10 numbers in Sifret, and you're gonna have to excuse me, my enunciation is not always that great. So we got knowledge is the first one, and Keter, Keter, sometimes spelled Kether, Kether, Kether alone. The supreme crown of God is part of knowledge. That's their one. Supreme Mathematics 2 is wisdom. Hokmah, wisdom. That's in the Sifret. In Supreme Mathematics 3 is understanding. In the Sifret, Binah, understanding and the intelligence of God. In Supreme Mathematics, we have culture of freedom. That's number 4. Hest, the love of mercy of God, also greatness. That doesn't really speak to cultural freedom. Could be, I didn't say it was perfect. I said plausible. 5, we got power refinement. In Supreme Mathematics, we have power refinement. And 5, in the Sifret, you have power, judgment, and punishment. In the Supreme Mathematics, we have equality. In Sifret, it is compassion, harmony, and beauty. In Supreme Mathematics 7, God. In Sifret, the endurance of God. You know what I'm saying? We all get inspired by stuff. We dig into things. And I'm not saying it did happen, but it is possible that Clarence 13X got inspiration from this. And because this is old. It's way older than the 1960s. It's plausible that he may have gotten information from that and built the Supreme Mathematics off of that and flipped it into his thing. We're always flipping stuff. That's part of humanity, to flip. I think African and Black folk, I don't really like the term Black because it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, I understand it. I'm proud to be Black and all this. Proud to be Black thing is also, that's a really weird thing because I'm proud to be from my ancestral lineage. On my mother's side, the elders in my family did the research. On my mother's side, we from Mozambique, Africa. On my father's side is Muskogee Indian from this country. Some people call it Creek, but Creek is, some people, is derogatory. But I'm proud of the ancestry I'm from. But I didn't have nothing to do with this. I didn't ask to come here and be born this color. I didn't ask to be born into the family I am. I had nothing to do with this. So I'm proud of the people who I come from and what they have done. And I ain't proud of everything because everything ain't great, but I'm proud of. But I do understand a sense of blackness. Blackness is about transcendentalism. It's about the way that I live. It's about the way that my cousin in Memphis, we both black. We know what it means to be black in this country. We understand representation and how representation is placed upon you at times. So it's those things, but it's like this word salad that we get caught up into. Let me tell you something. Before you knew who your parents were, before you knew what color you were, before you knew anything, you were aware of your being, just your sense of being. To me, that's more important than these labels they got on the life labyrinth that people subscribe to and get lost. Us as spiritual beings is greater than that. I don't care if people are having their human issues around being divisive around each other. That's sad because we are deeper and bigger, grander, vaster than that. That is a strict limitation on us as spiritual beings. I share the information I can share so that we can be in conversation. We don't always have to agree, but we should be able to listen. Because in this world now, people are talking about being inclusive. Inclusivity means including the thing you disagree with, or you're not inclusive. You have to be willing to sit with people who have a different perspective, a different viewpoint of you. And you don't have to appreciate it, but you can appreciate why they find it valuable. While I don't succumb to calling myself foundational Black American, I can appreciate why Tariq and others follow that. I can appreciate that. It's not for me, but I can appreciate that. I can be in conversation. I can challenge. I can listen. And that's why I offered the brother, when I made my comment and he asked me, he responded, that's why I offered. If you're truly interested, but instead of responding to me, he go live and want to shuck and jive, or, I don't understand the playful voices like that's, to me, that's offensive. So again, I provide context here so y'all can have some actual books to go look at and research and see what you think about it, and have some other video things to look at and some other places to go. So y'all know what I do. I continue to share information. I don't just come out and spit without giving you documents and telling you to go do your research. You don't have to listen to me. I'm sharing information. Now you go take it, you go read those books, you go watch those films, you go to the Library of Congress and sit and go through those papers, and then you come away with your own thing. So that's all I wanted to do. I did it way longer than I thought it was. And yeah, that's it. Monsiezy here, Intangible Roots. You know what it is, you know what we do. I'm out, y'all. Unless y'all got a quick question. Actually, the delay on this, I'm not waiting. If you have a question for me or you have a comment, the fucked up shit is I was on Instagram, but my phone died, and so that's lost. But post your comments up on this if you have a question for me. You can find me on Instagram, Munsell Durden. DM me your question, DM me your comment. Please place comments on this. Be in conversation with each other. I should have said that in the beginning. I like it, like what Kevin was doing. I like it when people jump on, and it's not that everything people present like I don't know, and there's some stuff I might not know, but it's always good in the comments when people are adding to the conversation. So if you know something, whether or not I know it, again, it's not about being condescending because I don't know what everybody knows and you don't know what I know. So we offer what we have. That's how we keep the lines of communication going, right? So throw the stuff in the chat, think about it, agree with it, disagree with it, whatever, make yourself known, right? We all got opinions. yeah, so I'm out. Thank y'all for tuning in. Hope it wasn't too much. And to people that wasn't able to tune in, I know a lot of people in Europe and my people in Australia and stuff. Time was really crazy for them. So if y'all get to watch it later, throw your comment in there. Don't be passive. Be active in this situation. This is what the lived experience is. It's about being active participants. So throw your thing in there. Don't be afraid to make yourself known, your comments known. You don't have to, but we appreciate it. So I'm out. I think this thing automatically saves to the John. Peace and love to all of y'all, and take care of yourself and each other. Later.